If you grew up with the adventures of Indiana Jones, then this movie will destroy those memories, because it seems that nowadays Disney is milking dry the remaining IPs from their sagging tit of creativity. Let's look at why Indy 5 is such a bad movie. There are three main reasons: the characters, the CGI, and the plot. The setup for this film is pretty simple. Our beloved charismatic adventurer is now nearing retirement and is basically the old grumpy guy from Up. That is until Helena, his goddaughter, comes to pluck him out of his slumber. Then ensues a race against time to put an artifact together, a dial created by Archimedes, a mythical time-bending relic. And all of this while some Nazis are chasing them, of course. Now, the thing I remember about the original trilogy is that on the backdrop of a swashbuckling adventure, you really had some amazing characters. Indy with his rugged charm and wit, but also some memorable allies and adversaries, who each had their own distinct personalities, which added to the depth of the roller coaster adventure. And one of the biggest problems with this film are the characters. Let's start with the worst, Helena, played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She's just an insufferable, obnoxious character. She's always one step ahead of everyone. She has this annoying "I told you so" kind of face, and as the audience, it's really difficult to root for her throughout the film. And by the end of it, there's very little character development to make her even come close to being likable. But am I being unfair here? Do guys get an easy ride for being that classic, cocky, morally dubious character like Han Solo, Peter Quill, or even younger Indy himself? I personally don't think so. With all of these characters, you see that they also have some endearing characteristics. As well as their more questionable traits, there are deeper values that run within them. Like, for example, the loyalty to their friends and loved ones. And as the story goes along, you begin to see more and more of their good side. Helena's character, even in her final act, remains unlikable, with no real development, no real reason for her to change her ways, and so remains a flawed, hollow, annoying character, and is given the screen time to upstage even Indy in his final movie. On to Mads Mikkelsen, who plays the role of the villain and Nazi physicist. While I think he's an incredible actor, his character is so poorly written, with no air of benevolence. Even at one point when he catches up with Indy and the crew, he's bumbling around trying to guess the next step. It comes off really silly rather than sinister. And Mads is an actor who plays the sinister roles well. I feel with this movie they couldn't decide which way to go, so they kind of did a bit of both and actually ended up with neither. And when it comes to Indy, Harrison Ford does a good job of reprising this role, albeit with the limitation that being 80 years old would give him. Even then, the plot, the storyline, it really stifles his performance by trying to have him ride horses and in the middle of car chases, which at times looks a little bit ridiculous, either because it has to be CGI'd or that he has his body double doing it, which is kind of obvious to see. But I think if you want to see a better reprisal of one of his classic 80s characters, then I'd recommend Blade Runner 2049 over this one. It feels more authentic and natural to me. There's also a boy called Teddy, whose role is just to move the plot along, and anytime they need a rickshaw or a plane, he's just kind of lingering around. His character is another cardboard cutout that they really should have cut out. And then there's the ensemble of cast from the old films that reprise their roles, but with such little screen time or even any real meaningful reason to be there, that it feels kind of cheap, and it feels like a marketing gimmick to tug at your nostalgic heartstrings.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Nothing. Me? Just hanging around.
And finally, the only highlight for me is Toby Jones, who plays the role of Indy's friend and accomplice. He's actually fantastic in this and really carried the movie at certain points. When it comes to the CGI, I think this is going to divide people. Some people walk away from it thinking the de-aging of Indy looked great. For me, in certain parts, like if the lighting was dark or if he just held a certain expression, it looked great. As soon as he spoke, changed expressions, or added movement, you entered this uncanny valley and actually takes away from a good start to the movie. In general, the CGI in this film is quite poor, like most of the Marvel and Disney CGI you see nowadays. Like this scene of Indy riding a horse through the middle of a parade, the body movement really feels unnatural and it really pulls you out of the action. There's also this comically bad running on a train scene at the beginning that looks like instead of CGI, the motion effects people use the dial of time to go back to the 60s and use stock motion. times in the beginning you feel rather than watching an Indiana Jones movie, you're actually watching someone play an Uncharted ripoff. The combination of poor CGI, jarring moments of de-aging makes it feel more of a video game than a movie. The original Indiana Jones movies had captivating, well-crafted storylines. There was a mixture of artifacts, history, and mythical elements, weaving a sense of wonder and intrigue. This movie seems to have some of those elements, but it feels hollow and it has moments that make no sense at all. The theme of the movie is that time has caught up with our hero. He can't do the things he used to. How is he going to deal with this? And instead of actually exploring this and leaning into it, they pretty much have him doing what Indiana Jones normally does, which is car chases, riding horses, cracking his whip, scuba diving, punching bad guys, and parachuting out of planes. All of this while showing very little signs of any real difficulty. Our reluctant hero also only decides to join the race for the Dahl so that he wouldn't be blamed for the murder of some people in his office. This kind of weak character motivation and absurdly ludicrous finale meant that the payoff for the 2.5 hours that you were sitting there was actually quite weak. Indiana Jones 5 is another forgettable sequel. Here was a great opportunity for fresh storytelling and a memorable send-off for an iconic character. Instead, we got the same tried and failed formula of unlikable strong female lead, poor CGI, and a plot that my left testicle could write. It just kind of feels like everybody's going through the motions in this film. The big action set pieces that feel just pasted on rather than being an integral part of the plot. Indy is a grumpy loser who's either written that way or 80-year-old Harrison Ford just woke up on his usual side of the bed. And going to watch this is akin to telling your inner child that you're going on a family trip to Disneyland, packing your car full of the family and your aging pet dog Indy, and rounding the corner you realize it's actually a trip to the local vet, then spending 2.5 hours with front row seats not only to watch your dog being put down, but actually dissected right in front of your eyes.
No.
And all of this sponsored by those nice folks at Disney. And if this was the nail in the coffin of Indy, click on the next review in which I'm breaking down the death of James Bond. Well, kind of. This is Blackbird, a hilariously bad attempt at a James Bond movie. See you on there.